We often hear the media lamenting that gas prices are up, pork prices are up, or this morning's banh mi is a few thousand dong more expensive than yesterday, then blaming it on supply chains, natural disasters, or geopolitical crises. But that is just a spectacular hoax to cover up a naked truth. Goods do not inherently become more expensive. Rather, the money in your pocket is becoming worth less by the day. The core essence of inflation does not lie on the commodity market side, but in the money printing presses running at full capacity of central banks. When the amount of cash pumped into the economy far outpaces the growth rate of real wealth, every single bill you hold in your hand is ruthlessly diluted in value. More frighteningly, inflation does not make money vanish into thin air. It is merely an incredibly sophisticated, one-way wealth transfer. Inflation is inherently the most ruthless stealth tax in history, requiring no congressional approval, having no specific tax bracket, yet striking directly at the poor and middle class, those who primarily hold wealth in cash or fixed salaries. While their lifelong savings are eroded like a sandbank before ocean waves, the tycoons, who hold real assets such as real estate, stocks, or gold, grow rapidly richer as their asset values are inflated along with the printed money. Inflation ultimately is a perfectly designed game to pick the pockets of ordinary working people and legally transfer that wealth into the hands of the asset-owning elite. The most ironic part of this game is that ordinary workers are the first and hardest hit, yet the last to realize the truth. When a massive amount of money is printed, it does not immediately flood local markets or grocery stores, but flows first into the banking system and large financial corporations. The oligarchs and those at the top of the economic food chain get access to this new money first while its value is still intact, using it to acquire land, factories, and strategic assets at cheap prices. By the time this cash flow trickles down through multiple layers to reach day laborers or retirees, its purchasing power has severely diminished, while the cost of living has already soared. This is the Cantillon effect, a silent but brutal wealth transfer mechanism that turns cash holders into permanent losers. People blindly believe that working hard, tightening their belts, and saving money in banks is the safe path to secure their future. But in reality, they are voluntarily paying this hidden tax to a system already heavily rigged for the wealthy. When money loses its core store of value function and turns into a hot potato that burns anyone who holds it too long, the wealth gap is no longer determined by labor productivity, but by who owns assets before the printing press begins to run. Therefore, the fight against inflation is inherently an unequal battle, where victory always belongs to those who control the rules of the game. People are often advised to invest to beat inflation, but for the middle class and the poor, this is yet another trap. To protect their meager savings from losing value, they are forced to plunge into high-risk financial markets like stocks or real estate when prices have already peaked, where the elites are waiting eagerly to sell and lock in profits. The asset bubble-blowing game thus continues, and when the bubble bursts, it is the small-scale workers who end up empty-handed, bearing the consequences of economic crises. This system continuously restructures the social order, where diligence is punished with gradual impoverishment, while asset speculation is rewarded with boundless wealth. The nature of inflation, after all, is not an objective, natural economic phenomenon like the weather, but a deliberate income redistribution tool, as long as people still mistakenly believe that inflation is caused by the market vendor or global oil prices. Without looking straight into the nature of the fiat currency system, they will continue to work harder every day only to receive an increasingly precarious life, while the massive wealth they create silently flows into the pockets of a minority who control the money printing press. The ultimate outcome of this vicious vortex is an exhaustion not only of financial resources but also of social trust. As the purchasing power of currency is infinitely eroded, the core values of honest labor begin to be upended. Young people realize that no matter how hard they study or how exhaustingly they work over time, their trickling wage growth will permanently fail to catch up with the skyrocketing speed of housing prices, an asset class blown up to unimaginable heights by the unrestrained printing of money. This despair gives birth to a defeatist generation, or conversely, drives them into a vortex of resignation or gambling with fate on high-risk speculative trading floors. Inflation, beneath the mask of dry economic indicators, is in reality an acid corroding the middle class, the backbone that maintains the stability of any society. When this class is pushed to the brink of poverty, society will be deeply polarized into two extreme poles. On one side, a tiny minority of oligarch clans holding all real wealth, and on the other, the vast majority of the masses struggling to survive day by day. Daily inflation news on television will continue to use flowery macroeconomic terms to reassure the public, but for those who truly understand the nature of the game, they know that without finding a way to own genuinely scarce assets to protect themselves, every drop of sweat they shed today is merely enriching the bottomless pockets of those who monopolize the printing press. That silent erosion will ultimately lead to an inevitable breaking point where trust in the monetary system completely collapses. When people realize the paper money in their hands is no longer a symbol of labor fruits, but just pieces of scrap paper rotting by the hour, they will begin to flee from the domestic currency. History has proven from Germany's Weimar, Zimbabwe, to Venezuela, every hyperinflation began with reckless money printing and ended in the chaos of a ruined economy. When money depreciates to an extreme degree, all genuine manufacturing and business activities will stall, because nobody wants to sell real goods in exchange for a currency whose value is evaporating. Ironically, even when the worst-case scenario unfolds, the plutocratic elite have already managed to move their wealth to other countries or hide safely in fortified asset havens like gold, diamond location real estate, or digital assets with a finite supply. Only the ordinary working class is left standing bewildered, watching their savings books, originally sweat and tears, retirement funds, or children's tuition, turn into meaningless numbers. The inflation hoax never stops on its own until it drains all societal resources, leaving behind a devastated economic structure where the rich have climbed to a completely isolated new height, while the poor must start over from scratch with empty hands and a bitter lesson about the true nature of currency. Looking back at this entire journey, the biggest trap is not our failure to make money, but our being stripped of the power to control the value we create. When the rules of the game are dictated by those holding the privilege of printing money, mere hard work is a necessary condition but utterly powerless to protect the fruits of labor. Realizing the nature of the inflation scam is not for us to fall into pessimism or giving up, but a wake-up call forcing each individual to radically change their financial mindset. To avoid becoming the next victim in this century's asset seizure, shifting from a cash accumulation mindset to a strategic asset accumulation mindset and constantly enhancing one's own capability value, the only asset no one can print more of or confiscate is the soul lifeline. The inflation game will continue as long as the fiat currency system exists, but once the velvet curtain is lowered and the truth is exposed, the choice to remain a lamb to be shorn or become a sober player, knowing how to defend yourself amid the flow of the era, is entirely in your hands. This awakening opens a new chapter for those who refuse to be victims of the underground blood-sucking machine. When the boundary between currency and true wealth is clearly drawn, the game is no longer about how much money you earn each month, but what percentage of your effort you keep in the form of undilutable assets. Enriched with clarity, people begin to turn their backs on the illusionary promises of bank deposit interest rates, which are actually just breadcrumbs thrown out to appease depositors while the principal value is being eroded behind the scenes. Instead, they learn to operate like the financial elite, seeking protection from naturally scarce assets, shares of businesses capable of passing inflation costs into selling prices, or pieces of land with practical use value. This is no longer a story of investing to get rich quickly, but a protracted financial resistance to protect the dignity and fruits of labor of themselves and their families. The printing presses of central banks may well continue to spin, politicians will still go on blaming objective causes, and the crowd out there will keep on wondering at the expensiveness of life. But for those who have seen through the nature of the scam called inflation, they have stepped out of the matrix to master their own destiny, turning knowledge into the ultimate weapon against the silent deprivation of the era. The journey to step out of that financial matrix demands immense perseverance, as the system always finds ways to create new illusions to lure those just beginning to awaken back into its orbit. When traditional methods of self-defense like gold or real estate are tightened by the elite through legal regulations and tax rates, this battle for survival will shift to the front of technology and a global mindset shift. New generation forms of assets, which are decentralized and beyond the control of any money-printing press, are gradually becoming the chosen fortresses of refuge. The old economic order built on blind faith in government debt notes is being progressively challenged by a community of people who choose to place their trust in mathematics, cryptography, and the unmanipulable laws of scarcity. This is not merely a change in an investment portfolio, but a silent yet fierce ideological revolution, where humans reclaim absolute ownership over their own time and effort. The operators of the inflation machine may possess ultimate power in pricing fiat currencies, but they will be utterly helpless against a generation of knowledgeable, connected individuals who resolutely refuse to sacrifice their future to a system designed to enrich itself on the poverty of the majority.